Hey, what's up? This is Doug with Design 8 Studio. I've got a bank of 3 Flashforge Adventurer 5M printers, and the second and third ones that I bought are running the Clipper mod. And the first one used to run the Clipper mod, but now it's running Forge X, which is a newer and better way to clipperize your Adventurer 5M or 5M Pro. In this video, I'm going to install Forge X to the third one in the series. Now, these printers come from the factory with Clipper firmware as stock on the main board. However, it's an older version of Clipper firmware, frozen in time, so to speak, and none of the Clipper-based user interface options are provided, with Flashforge instead choosing to offer their own user interface on the touchscreen. It's a proprietary thing. And there's no access to those browser-based remote Clipper UIs of Mainsail and Fluid. This mod not only gains those options, but also fixes several things that can cause issues with the printer, such as timer too close or other MCU errors, including the overflow error, and it offers over-the-air updates, OTA updates, for Forge X and Fluid, etc. So stick with me for the next few minutes and watch as I take the Clipper mod off and install Forge X, and I'll show you how to get things all configured and set up, as well as talk about the advantages and all the neat, cool stuff about Forge X, and you can decide whether or not you want to do this to your Adventurer 5M. Let's get to it. All right, let's get to it. First, we're going to take the Clipper mod off of my third Flashforge Adventurer 5M. Here you see it running with the Mainsail interface, and we're going to put Forge X onto it. Here you see my first Flashforge Adventurer 5M with the Fluid interface running Forge X. We're going to be doing this GitHub Dr. Alex FF5M firmware mod. We'll be using the Clipper mod's uninstall feature. And first, before I get into that, I do want to go over a couple of bits of housekeeping just to make sure you're aware of some things, and also briefly survey through a lot of the benefits and reasons why you might want to do this. Forge X is an unofficial mod to run Moonraker and Clipper with essential patches, Mainsail and Fluid on the Flashforge Adventurer 5M or 5M Pro 3D printers. The mod is based on Zmod, which itself is derived from Clipper mod. And of course, huge caveat here, if you choose to install this mod, be aware that you risk voiding your warranty or damaging your printer. And after installation or uninstallation, ensure that you check all your printer's parameters and perform a full recalibration. Failing to do that may result in damage to your printer, so proceed at your own risk. And then here's the disclaimer that Alexander, the guy behind this mod, the guy really is a genius, and I'm very thankful and grateful for his efforts. He says the printer has Linux, but it's not the Linux you're used to. It's not like Ubuntu or Debian. The printer is not a desktop. He says consider it more like a smart microwave. It uses firmware that has a Linux core at its base. He encourages you to read the documentation before doing anything because you risk completely bricking your printer. And if you do that, it is restorable, but that restore action could require additional hardware and even soldering in exceptional cases. He encourages not to flash one firmware over another unless you clearly understand what you're doing. Don't delete installation or uninstallation or recovery logs. It may help to restore your printer. And finally, if nothing is working and you don't understand why or what you can do, and you're not an experienced user and not a professional, it's better to ask for help before you do anything that could really completely brick your printer. You don't need that, and you need to be careful to read the docs first. There's also a tiny chance that you'd have to buy a new motherboard. The probability is near zero, but not impossible. So don't do anything if you're not really clearly understanding what you're doing. Let's look at the features of Forge X. First of all, it gets you the stock screen with the option to disable it completely or switch to a very lightweight feather screen version to reduce consumption of resources. It gets you Clipper with many newer patches, fixes, and plugins specifically adapted for the Adventurer 5M. It gets you Moonraker, Fluid, and Mainsail. And this is a nice thing. It gets you over-the-air updates, and that's really nice. It gets you root access. There is a buzzer with the ability to play monotonic melodies. These are like MIDI songs and notes that sound out of tune. You have a patched MJPEG streamer to dramatically reduce memory usage regarding your camera. There is time-lapse support via the Moonraker Telegram bot installed on an external host. It has adaptive bed meshing with CAMP. It's got built-in MD5 checks for G-code files. This is a really nice feature. When you get ready to send the print job wirelessly over to your printer, it will check to see what the checksum for the file is. It will add that information in what gets sent to the printer. Your printer will then check the checksum for the file, and if it doesn't match, you know that somehow there was a glitch in getting the file sent, and it won't try to print that file. And occasionally a file will get a little transmission error, and if you don't have this feature in play, then you don't find out that you didn't get a fully formed proper file until you're halfway or all the way, nearly all the way through it, and the job just bails out because it got a command that it couldn't fulfill because things got jumbled. So this built-in MD5 checks for the G-code files is a really helpful feature. There's a little trick to getting that to work on macOS. I'll talk about that. And then backup and restore mechanism for your printer's configuration. That's a really nice feature. A fix for the move queue overflow or the E0017 error. A fix for the communication timeout error. That's the E0011 error. A failsafe mechanism to prevent nozzle collisions. That involves a weight sensor that's already built into the bed of your AD5M, and we'll have several things to say about that. It has a better clear nozzle algorithm, enhanced shaper calibration with automatic plot generation, easy bed level screw tuning, customized dedicated Linux environment based on build root, Intware package manager for additional software installation, and the dual boot possibility with stock Flashforge software or the Clipper mod. So the TLDR is you need to uninstall any other installed mods first, make a backup in case you want to go back to it, install this mod, update the slicer with your start and end G-code, update your slicer's host type, enable LAN mode, enable the MD5 check for G-code files, and for each of these things, there is a link to click to take you to that point in the docs that tells you how to do that. Update the mod to any newer versions using the over-the-air updates, the OTA updates, and optionally, you can enable config tuning for a better first layer, and there's a link there you can click. And then finally, of course, you want to do a recalibration with bed mesh, shaper, and Z offset. If I understand Clipper correctly, a bed mesh gets the then current Z offset baked into it, and if you calibrate your Z offset or recalibrate your Z offset after doing a bed mesh, you'll have to do it again. And there's some optional things in here. Learn about Z offset, and then optionally enable the mod's camera implementation, which I've done. Optionally configure your LED lighting. Optionally enable feather screen, which I've done. Optionally enable bed collision protection, and finally optionally enable bed mesh validation. For getting started, you're going to follow the installation page instructions, and after that you'll need to update your slicer settings and your G-code, and then refer to the documentation for the slicing page for guidance. And This mod includes some additional features. It's encouraged that you read through the documentation on the printing page and the configuration page. There's also a frequently asked questions page, and there's an article on how to reduce resource usage. And you can reach the services using these addresses, and this is a slight difference from how it was done on the Clipper mod. You can reach Moonraker like normal at your printer's IP, and then the port number 7125. But to reach Fluid and Mainsail, instead of port numbers 4000 and 4001, you do a slash after the printer's IP address, and then either the word Mainsail or the word Fluid. And finally, if you need to do an SSH connection into your printer's main board, the username is root and the password is root. And if you encounter any issues, consult the documentation. If the problem persists, you can open an issue on GitHub. You can join the Telegram support. And let me mention, Alexander has been very phenomenal in checking in on the Telegram support group and responding to people there. And there's also a Discord server with regard to that. And Alexander mentions on the Why This Mod Was Developed section some reasons. It was created to address several critical limitations and challenges faced by users of the AD5M and AD5M Pro. Namely, there were instability issues and resource issues in existing Clipper mods. The Zmod development was a closed and inflexible development system, and he saw a lack of essential functionality in the stock firmware. And finally, the earlier Clipper mod was, and both that and the stock firmware were on an outdated Clipper with some unresolved bugs. Here are links for documentation. There's installation, configuration, slicing, printing, macros, frequently asked questions, the alternative screen, that's the feather screen, camera, Telegram bot, and time-lapse, dual boot, uninstall, and recovery mod. He thanks the Clipper mod developers for their great work, and also the Clipper and Moonraker communities for their ongoing development. And he gives a special thanks to the Russian Flashforge Adventurer 5M Telegram community, and mentions that it's based on Zmod. And so with that, let's get right into it. First of all, I'm going to go and I'm going to click on Install the Mod, and there it's going to link us to the release page. And when you get to the release page, you'll see that currently the latest is version 1.3.3, and at the bottom of that release, you'll find the assets that you need to download. And what we're interested in is this one file right here, the Adventurer 5M Forge X 1.3.3, and this is a tar zip file. So we're going to save it. And I've got a folder for the newer Clipper mod and the older Clipper mod. I need to rename this newer one to Forge X. And I'll create a folder here for V1.3.3, and we'll save the file in there. Now, some people make a mistake here of thinking that they need to unzip this file, extract its contents. You don't need to do that. We're simply going to copy. Well, before we do that, we need to uninstall the Clipper mod off of the older file. So we're going to go to the uninstall page of the Clipper mod, and we're going to go to the release page, and in the assets, click here, and we're going to do the uninstall right here. So we're going to copy the uninstall onto, this is the uninstall for the Clipper mod. We're going to put it into the root of a USB thumb drive, and then we're going to eject the thumb drive. And then we'll go put that into the printer and then power the printer down with the power switch. Wait a couple of seconds and then flip the power back on. And this should uninstall the clipper mod from the printer. All right, powering down now. All right, so the printer is powering back up now. All right, and there you see that the screen is telling me that the clipper mod has been uninstalled, and I need to remove the USB drive and power cycle the printer. I'm going to go ahead and get the USB thumb drive, bring it back over to the computer, and I'm going to put the Adventurer 5M Forge X 1.3.3 onto the USB drive, put it back into the printer before I power cycle again. All right, I am going to copy and this is the log file that you want to, this is one of the log files to save. I'll create a new folder called log files and I'll drop my uninstall into it, and then I'll go ahead and delete the clipper mod uninstall file and paste the Forge X 1.3.3 onto my USB drive. All right, and then once that's done, I'll go and eject the USB drive. Now I'll go to the printer and put the USB drive back in to the USB socket, then power cycle the printer one more time. So the printer is booting up and it's checking the contents of the USB drive. It's finding the new firmware file there, and it's going to begin running through the Forge X install process. All right, and then you see the printer telling me that the mod has been installed and I need to power cycle the printer one more time. All right, and it plays that little musical note once it's done. You'll notice that the feather screen implementation is not yet on the screen, but that feather screen implementation will show you both the Forge X version number and your stock firmware version number from Flashforge. If your stock firmware from Flashforge is too old, you really ought to update it before doing this mod. And even if you forget, you can go in here on the stock screen and go ahead and update it. So as we go back to the installation instructions, we uninstalled the other mod first. We downloaded Forge X from the release page. You may have to rename the file to match your printer version. For Pro, you rename the file in the format shown, and for the non-Pro, it should remain as it is. And you insert the USB drive into your printer and power it on. The printer automatically installs the update. You eject the USB drive and remove the printer. And then let's check for over-the-air updates. So first of all, in this window, we had mainsail on the printer's IP address for the old clipper mod. Now, instead of a colon for a port number, we want to put a slash and then the word fluid. And mainsail is an option also, but here we are, everything set up and running. Let's home the printer. And We'll run the bed up a couple of 100 millimeters. Bring the print head over in view. Very good. All right, now I'm going to click on Settings on the left, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it's going to tell me that Fluid is up to date, Forge X is up to date, and if you doubt, you can just click Check for Updates. And if there are any updates found, then you'll get a button that tells you that there is something that you can update. So Forge X apparently has a very minor update available, and Fluid has a version number update. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to do an over-the-air update for Forge X, and it's going to restart the firmware. So we'll give it a minute. There we go. All right, back under Settings, back down to Software Updates. You see there's an over-the-air update available for Fluid. I'll tap on that button to update that. Let me mention real quickly about cameras. There is a default camera set up here, and it uses a special placeholder called this word webcam that automatically gets updated with your printer's IP address, so that you don't have to bother with doing that to set this up. It's automatically set to the right settings, and as you can see, it came online supporting my camera right out of the gate without me having to do anything, which is nice. And then let's go back. I'll close the old now and only look at the new. And so going by this shortened list of things that you need to do, we've installed the mod. Now we're going to update the slicer. So this is my first Adventurer 5M, and it's got the machine G-code set so that the start printer extruder with the temp equals this, and the bed temp equals that. And that's the key information we need right there. I'll click here in the documentation, and you see it tells you this is what you need. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go to my AD5M3, and it looks like I already started doing this, so I'll just go with that. It's not feather screen yet, but it will be, so that's why I've got it titled that way, AD5M. I'll just show you here on AD5M number 3, you would click this little icon, go to Machine G-Code, and you would replace that with what you copied from the documentation. For end G-Code, you need end print, which is what we have there. And for feather screen, you can change to this version. So that's really what I'm after. This added content is only necessary if you're using the stock screen. I'm interested in the feather screen. So I'm going to switch to the feather screen version. And under Machine G-Code, I would paste what I got from there. And in print is, I've already got in print there. And then configuring for Moonraker Clipper connection, your host type needs to say Moonraker Clipper or Clipper via Moonraker, and then your host name, IP or URL needs to be your printer IP with a colon for a port number and 7125. So I will save this, get out of that, go into this little Wi-Fi button here, and as it mentions, it needs to be Moonraker or Clipper via Moonraker, and I'm on Octo/Clipper. By the way, this is Orca Slicer that you're seeing here. I'm on Octo/Clipper as my host type, and I do know that works. And then my printer's IP address is .34, then the colon, then the port number 7125. And while you're here, if you want to put the device UI, that's the same IP address, 192.168.1.34, then the slash and fluid. And once that's in place, it allows you to click on the device tab and see the same thing that you would see in a browser. Now, if I change that, instead of saying fluid, I say mainsail. Then if I click device, instead of loading fluid, it will load mainsail. Fluid and mainsail are very close. There are a few differences, and in some regards, some people like mainsail better. There are some aspects, my understanding is there are some aspects of fluid that there's something there to like that's not present in mainsail. One of them, and I don't really understand yet how to do it, but if you've got, let's say you're printing 9 hinges and one of them pops loose off the bed, there's a way to say stop printing this one that popped loose, but keep printing the other ones. And my understanding is this is supported in fluid, but not yet in mainsail, and that may have changed, but that was my understanding. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'll change this back to saying fluid. And when I go to the device tab, I get fluid. All right, going back to all of the start print things, it tells you everything that's involved with start print, and then it talks to you about MD5 checksum validation. Now I know this sounds like I'm just reading the stuff that's here, but I'm telling you, you really need to read the documentation. And you'll notice there is a .bat file, a .bat file for Windows, and a .sh script file for Linux or Mac. It says here one of the main reasons for print failures is corrupted G-code files after sending them over the network. To prevent this issue, the mod implements MD5 checksum validation before starting a print. If a file has a corrupted checksum, the print will be canceled automatically, and the G-code file will be deleted to prevent accidentally printing it again. To enable the MD5 checksum validation, you need to add a checksum to your G-code file. This can be done by adding a post-processing script in your slicer. First, you download the script to your computer. Take note of where you save it. To ensure that the script has correct permissions to get executed on Linux or a Mac, you may need to run chmod +x /add ADDM5 MD5.sh to make it executable. For Mac OS, if the script doesn't run, remove the quarantine flag with x-d com.apple.quarantine./addmd5.sh. That's in the docs because I ran into it and Alexander helped me figure it out. So he keeps updating the docs to make sure everybody has what they need to know. So download this, take note of where you saved it, and then, as it mentions, download the script, save the appropriate script to your computer, open Orca Slicer, and go to Print Profile, Other. I'll show you where we're at on that. We'll go to Prepare, and then we'll go to, I'm pretty sure that happens. Okay, we choose a print profile, okay, and then we click on Global, and we click on Others, and you see post-processing scripts right here. Now, if I go to this one, you'll see that the post-processing script was already put into this profile. This is the 2mm layer height, but I've got this 0.28mm layer height that doesn't have it yet. So I need to right-click and paste that. Uh-oh, that's the wrong thing. I didn't want to paste that. Let me go back over here, and it tells you add the post-processing script. Find the post-processing scripts section, enter the full path to the downloaded script, and save the profile for future prints. For slice and export, when you slice a model and export it, the script will automatically add the checksum to the file. So I'm going to go back to the one that has it. And I was using a hotkey, Command-C, to copy it. But if for some reason here, you have to right-click and choose copy. Then when you go to the other profile, my 0.12 layer height has it. My 0.2 layer height has it. That one has it. That one has it. That one has it. But here is this one that didn't have it. So now I'm going to right click and paste. Now it's got the path for me is users, Doug G. Joseph, documents, 3D, Flashforge, and then there I've got my script. And then you click this little save button right here and save it to that profile. So this is accessed by any different printer that has access to this filament layer height setting. So if I go here, it's still got access to it. If I go here, it's still got access to it. So I'm on my AD03 in my 0.4 nozzle. It's got access to my 0.28 millimeter layer height profile, and it's got the post-processing script included. Okay? All right, so we've looked at slicing. We've updated our host type. Enable LAN mode using stock firmware. To use this mod with a stock screen, enable LAN mode. Some features require this setting, and the web UI slicer interactions may be unstable without it. Enable it on the stock screen by going to Settings, Network, Network Mode, LAN mode. Let me just pause here and mention the stock screen. The challenge with the stock screen is that this mod shares common setup information that the stock screen also uses. That's great. If you do calibrations in the stock screen, this mod knows about it. And if you change those calibration settings in this mod, the stock screen is looking at the same files. Where you can run into difficulty is if you do something in mainsail or fluid and the stock screen doesn't know you did it, and this business about changing to LAN mode may be designed to help with that. Hey, future me again. I checked with Alexander on this, and LAN mode is needed for two reasons. It disables external network access via the printer serial number. Anyone with the serial number can access the printer and the webcam. It also starts a local server that allows the mod to control the printer in certain scenarios, like the auto dialog dismissal function in fast mode. I haven't paid a lot of attention to that because the stock screen is a bit of a resource hog. And to get your best shot at great success, you can offload all of that user interface stuff to a browser with Fluid or Mainsail loaded in it, or the device tab of your slicer with Fluid or Mainsail loaded into it, and use those things for your user interface. And then just basically, it's almost as good as going headless. Going headless is where you just turn the touchscreen off entirely. And you say, well, then what good is my touchscreen? Well, your touchscreen in this setup is doing the work that a Raspberry Pi would do if you were doing Clipper that way. Your touchscreen, the processing power of your touchscreen is standing in for what a Raspberry Pi would do. It's serving up the user interface to the browsers, and it's communicating your actions onto the main board. So going headless is where you let the touchscreen just do those things and not try to also load an additional local touch interface at the screen itself. Feather screen is almost as lightweight as going headless, and it adds just a few helpful details reflected to you on the screen. I like feather screen. You can try in stock screen mode if you like, but do this thing of setting it to land mode. And in my case, I'm going to go ahead and set mine to feather screen. But if you want to go ahead and calibrate while you're in the stock screen, go ahead and do your shaper things and your bed mesh things using the stock screen. You can absolutely do that and change to feather screen later, because everything is looking at the same shared common information. The stock screen is updating those config settings, and the mod will then pay attention to those calibrated settings in the config. And so you can, if you want to, you can do that. But under calibration, to calibrate the printer, only use these macros. The stock screen doesn't support the save config macro, and it can cause freezing. A reboot is required afterward. Learn how to work around this over here. All of these macros are available in the Fluid Mainsail main screen in the section Calibration. Bed level screws tune. This adjusts bed leveling screws, calculates the adjustments for nuts under the bed. Recalibrate the bed mesh after you make any such changes. Then there's Auto Full Bed Level, PID Tune Bed, PID Tune Extruder, and Z-Shaper. I won't be doing the bed level screws tune. If you think that your screws are out of adjustment and your bed is really wonky, that's something you can do. But everything after that has to be done again if you do the screws adjustment. Again, my bed is fine. It's only slightly out, and the normal auto leveling takes up for that. And so rather than doing these things right now, I'm going to go ahead and set mine to feather screen, and then I will use my fluid interface. For instance, I can copy this right here. I can copy, let me get it all. I can copy that right there, and I can go to fluid, and in the console, I can paste that command and hit send, and it will automatically start the auto bed leveling feature. Okay, but let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and right click on screen, or tap on screen rather. The stock screen implementation on the AD5M or AD5M Pro is not optimized for direct interaction with fluid. This is because Flashforge's firmware is designed to work exclusively with its own services and does not handle external control well. For example, you can't just do restart or save config. It freezes the screen. You have to reboot the printer afterward. And you can view the mod.cfg file with macros that make the screen work with Bear, Clipper, and Moonraker. Also, the screen consumes a lot of RAM, somewhere between 7 and 15 megabytes. And with the printer's limited memory of just 128 megabytes, that's a deal breaker. However, we don't have to use the stock screen to free up resources. We can run the printer headless, or we can use feather screen. To use feather screen, to reduce resource usage, the mod provides the alternative feather screen implementation. It's lightweight, it consumes minimal resources. It's designed to display essential print information such as print status, temp, estimated remaining time, and while it does not currently support user input, it's highly extensible and customizable. By using the feather screen, you can reduce resource usage while maintaining essential functionality. This is particularly beneficial for users running complex prints or using additional mods. So let's say you're printing something that is going to take 4 or 6 or 8 hours to print, some big helmet or some huge thing. To use feather screen gives you your best shot of not having a resource bottleneck at 89% into that print and having a headache. So to switch to the feather screen or to go headless, disabling the stock screen changes how the printer works. It no longer loads the mesh data profile or applies the Z offset automatically. To apply the Z offset, you can use the global mod parameter preferred, described in configuration, or alternatively, you can use the start print option described in slicing. To enable feather screen to free up resources, set the following mod parameter: set mod param display value feather. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click copy. I'm going to go to fluid, and I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to paste that command. And when I do that, it's going to echo some things. Critical notice: do not disable the stock screen unless you fully understand bed mesh calibration and Z offset configuration, and also update your start print and end print macro behavior. We already did that. Improper handling may cause printer damage. Review the documentation first. And then it gives a link to the printing page, and we can actually just copy that right there, and then actually just go to a browser window and type that in, and it brings us right straight back to the printing page that we already looked at. And so we see here, using stock firmware with the mod, enabling LAN mode to calibrate the printer, you do these things. And so at this point, let me check my screen. So you can see there, my screen has already gone to feather screen mode. So now we're right back where we were before, and I'm not going to do the bed level screws tuning, but I am going to do the auto bed level tuning. So I'm going to, this is my AD5M01. I don't want to mess with that one. I want to do my AD5M03, which is this one. Somewhere here, I think there is a way to rename this. Here we go, printer name. I like AD5M-03 because I have 3 of them. I like to be able to tell them apart. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to paste the auto full bed level command. I think there's probably also a button for it somewhere. I'm not going to bother with finding it, and I'm going to hit send. And it says bed mesh calibrate, profile auto. Info has started the stock nozzle cleaning. The state is to prepare for cleaning and heating. It's waiting for the bed temperature to reach 80 Celsius. And I'm probably just going to go silent here so that later I can simply fast forward through this process. But this is the auto full bed level macro in operation. Okay, I mentioned I was trying to figure out what was going on with the camera. Apparently when you switch to feather screen, you've got to enable the camera. So it's instructing me to do this. So I'm going to paste this command in. Set mod param camera value true. Okay, so you can see this weight value, that is coming from the weight sensor. And the weight sensor is not only how the printer detects when the nozzle has touched the bed for the bed mesh, but it can also later be used to detect if there's a problem that's driving the nozzle too far into the bed or scraping it across the bed in a way that could possibly damage the bed or the nozzle. And that is an optional feature that you can enable. But this orange, let me just mention briefly, the weight sensor can be calibrated. And ideally, it should be calibrated to set 0 when there's nothing on the bed while the bed is hot, while the bed is heated for printing. And the weight sensor is such that if it's calibrated to 0 while the bed is cold, it will think that weight has been added when the bed is hot. Conversely, if it's calibrated to 0 while the bed is heated for printing, it will mistakenly think that there is weight present when the bed is cold. So here you see it thought that there was 620 grams of weight on the bed, and then as the bed heated up, it got back to properly calibrated with saying that there was 0 weight on the bed. And then as the probing was done for the bed mesh, you saw these spikes, and those spikes were the weight of the nozzle touching the bed, and it was detecting that weight, and then knowing that that gave it the information for creating the mesh. And now as the bed is cooling down, it's going back up to mistakenly thinking there's weight on the bed. But when it's properly calibrated to show 0 at heated for printing, then you need to simply ignore the fact that when it's cold, it mistakenly thinks that there's weight applied. Just ignore that entirely. And one of the things that I've found helpful is to set the color to something a little bit less noticeable. And so there's an option to change that color and to something darker, like a dark purple or something. But anyway, that's just something that you might want to do. Okay, so we've done auto full bed level. Let's now do the PID tuning of the bed. So we're just going to go in, right click, paste that command in here, and hit go. And you'll see that it instantly went from telling the bed to go to 0 to telling the bed to go to 80°C. So it's going to heat it back up to 80°C, 80 degrees Celsius, and when it does that, it's then going to work on calibrating, keeping it at that right temperature. It'll gain some knowledge from that, and it will store that knowledge in the files. After that, we will also do PID Tune Extruder, which does the heat maintaining thing for the nozzle, just like we're currently doing for the bed. And then finally, after that, we're going to do Z Shaper. So again, I'm just going to go quiet for now so I can fast forward through this later for playback for you. Oh, our camera came back on. That's good. It should have. Camera's been re-enabled in feather screen mode now. But you can see here we're within 5 degrees of getting to 80. All right, so my PID tuning of the bed is completed, and you see the values there, the KP, the KI, and the KD, and it's telling me that the save config command will update the printer with these and restart. So I just tap on that command, it loads it in, and then I hit send, and it's doing save config. And as soon as it comes back on, I need to go ahead and heat up my nozzle and get some filament loaded in, because here after a bit, when I finish with the tuning, I'm going to want to do a test print. Under filament, there is a load material macro. If you click that, these options pop up. There's load, unload, and purge. We are at 220, so I think if you're not at temperature, then when you choose an option, it will go ahead and fix the temperature for you. But what I need to do now is load. I think there's an option to have my LEDs come on by default, and I got to find that and put that in. All right, so we completed the PID tune bed. Now we're going to do the PID tune extruder. This is another one that is going to take a little time. I'll try to go silent so I can just fast forward through it later. All right, the PID parameters for PID tune of extruder have appeared before me, so I just need to click on Save Config and send that. While we're waiting for it to reconnect, I will go ahead and come over here and grab and copy the Z Shaper macro name, and I will paste Z Shaper into console and hit enter. And the printer is now going to set about doing all of the shaking and vibrating that it does for input shaper, resonance detection, and compensation. And again, this is probably not anything that you haven't seen before. I'll try to go silent until it finishes this process so that I can fast forward through it when I'm showing you the video later. Before I go silent, what I'm interested in now is where does it tell me how to have my LEDs automatically come on. I'm in the stage of waiting for calculations on the Z Shaper. Okay, you can find your shaper calibration and configuration mod data, and the save config command will update the printer config file. Let me just show you where you can find that. Over here on the left, we're going to go, let me turn my LEDs back on. Preparing image for x-axis, preparing image for y-axis. Plots will be generated. Okay, so it just turned my LEDs back on, and the images are now done. They're located in configuration mod data tab. So what we would do is go over to configuration, click into mod data, and we've got comma separated values and JSON values. But what I wanted to show you is these two pings, one for X. You see that frequency response, and my understanding, I'm not really up on all this, but my understanding is that having a really pronounced spike here is good, and it's compensating in this prescribed way so that after a corner is turned, you don't get that shaking echoed permanently into your print. But that's the X value, and then you can download it, and then there's the Y value. Again, this is what you want to see, this nice pronounced spike here, and it's got these compensations, and we're all good to go there. Okay, so we've done auto full bed level, PID tuning on the bed and the extruder, and Z shaper. Under bed mesh, the printer uses different bed meshes depending on scenario. When using the stock user interface, it loads a bed mesh named mesh data. When using feather screen, it loads a bed mesh named auto. When using the option to force leveling, the mod will save the mesh to the name default rather than auto. And after the print is completed, that will be deleted. There's information here on how to enable and do clipper adaptive meshing and purging. Some folks really like that. I haven't really bothered with it. Bed collision protection. Here is where you can enable the weight check and set the weight check max, and the bed mesh validation can be enabled. Z offset in stock screen mode, Z offset is managed via the firmware screen. It's automatically saved and loaded for the next print. For the feather screen, you can control Z offset using the standard macros or fluid main cell controls. It will be saved but not loaded automatically after a reboot. To enable the load Z offset mod parameter, to make the mod automatically save and load the Z after a reboot like the stock firmware will do. Once load Z offset is enabled, adjust the Z offset through fluid or main cell standard controls, which use the set G code offset. The mod will then save the Z offset to the configuration and load it automatically after a reboot. And so it tells how to do this. For example, enable Z offset loading. We do this, set, and then set the Z offset. You can actually manually set it. I can just use the buttons to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in. Set mod param, load Z offset value true. And LED light control. I think this is what I was looking for a minute ago. Use LED S equals % macro to set LED brightness. The mod also includes an LED clippers plugin which allows inverting LED controls in cases where the LED is connected using a non-standard scheme. To enable this feature, you need to add a parameter in user.cfg, and you would go LED chamber light, and you can set invert false or true as needed, and initial white at this percentage, like 0.2 would be 20% brightness. I want to do this. So I'm going to go to config, and what did it say? User.cfg. I'm going to look for user.cfg, and I'm just going to paste that in and save and restart. And hopefully when it restarts now, my LEDs come back on automatically. Here's some information about fixing the communication timeout, the E0011, and the move queue overflow, the E0017 error. In stock firmware, some internal clipper parameters controlling MCU communication and the move queue are not optimally configured, which can cause these errors. To fix, enable the mod parameter tune clipper value 1. I'm going to go ahead and do that because I don't know a reason not to. I've already switched to feather screen. You can disable swap completely if Moonraker's off. I'm not going to bother with that. Okay, going back to the original. I want to go back to that original TLDR list and just see where we are on it. Okay, we've installed the mod. We've updated the slicer. Starting NG code. We've updated the slicer host type. We're not going to need to enable LAN mode because we're not using the stock screen. We do want to enable the MD5 check. We already did that, and I'd forgotten. Update the mod to new versions using over-the-air. We did that. Optional, and enable config tuning for a better first layer. I am interested in doing that. I think I did that on the other printer. Okay. Config tuning. Okay, tune clipper enables a fix for communication timeout. Tune config enables firmware parameter tuning for optimized settings. See change parameters here. Tune config. This is something I want to do for better first layer. Set mod param tune config value, and it requires recalibration afterward. I should have done this first. I should have done this before doing the calibration, but I'll look into what calibration has to be redone. Okay. Set firmware parameter tuning, yes. After changing this parameter, after changing this value, be sure to recreate the bed mesh and adjust the Z offset. If you have performed dimension calibration, it must also be updated. Additionally, you may need to recalibrate the flow and pressure advance. Printing with an old bed mesh or Z offset may damage the printer. You can view the changed parameters in mod tuning.config. Info clipper will be restarted to apply the changes. So it looks like I just need to recreate the bed mesh and adjust the Z offset.
One calibration later.
I don't think I need to bother with PID tuning of bed and extruder again. Only the Z and the bed level, which hopefully doing this takes care of the Z for me automatically. But when we go to do a test print, if we don't like how the Z offset is looking on the first layer, we'll cross that bridge. Or as one guy said, we'll blow that bridge up when we come to it. Okay, optional, learn about Z offset. We already enabled the load Z offset so that each time the printer reboots, it will remember its Z offset. We already did that. We did the LED light control. Is it working? Yes, our lights did come back on, and because I set it at that 0.2, they're not as bright, and that seems to make the image look a little better to me. Okay, so we've enabled config tuning. We're redoing the bed mesh. Oh, it says we need to do shaper. We need to do Z shaper again also. So we're nearing the end. We're down into the optional stuff. We've read about Z offset. We've enabled the mods. We stumbled onto the fact that we needed to enable the mods camera implementation. We've stumbled onto configuring your LED lighting. Look at that. I was looking so hard to find that, and it was in the TLDR. I should have just read a little further. We've already optionally enabled feather screen. After we finish the bed mesh and the Z shaper, we're going to be down to enabling the bed collision protection. And I think we already did the bed mesh validation. All you have to do to enable that, bed mesh validation, enable or disable, set 1 to enable. Set mod param equals and value. So we would want to do something like set mod param equals bed mesh validation equals true. If we're wanting to do that, I can't even remember. Is that something I do? Bed mesh validation. To prevent printing issues caused by an invalid bed mesh, the mod uses a bed mesh validation feature. This feature checks the bed mesh before starting a print and ensures it matches the current printer configuration. Common scenarios where this is useful include when using a bed mesh created for a different bed plate, printing without a bed plate installed, and accidentally changing essential kinematics parameters that affect Z movement. Okay, I don't remember bothering with this before, and I may not bother with it now, but if I did want to bother with it, I think this command is what would turn it on. I may go ahead and turn it on just to see how it does. And bed collision protection. All right, to avoid the bed scratching caused by the nozzle hitting the bed, the mod includes a collision detection feature. It's controlled by the mod's parameters. Weight check enables or disables collision detection, and weight check max sets the maximum. For protection to work correctly without false triggers, ensure your bed's weight sensor isn't defective and shows accurate values when the bed is cold and after it's warmed up. Now, my understanding is if you've got it set to show accurate values when it's warmed up, you're automatically going to get incorrect values when it's cold, and you just have to ignore that. Some users experience weight sensor degradation where the difference between a cold and warm bed can be 2 to 3 kilograms. All right. I'm saying that the difference between warm and cold, what I'm seeing is somewhere between 600 to 800 grams, not 2,000 to 3,000 grams. So I think I'm okay. Read this before enabling about bed pressure error, about MCU shutdown, and about end-stop state error and timer too close. Warning, don't set weight check max too low. Legitimate situations such as the nozzle scratching an over-extruded model or the weight of the model itself can trigger false stops. Over time, the bed's weight can also increase during long prints due to the weight of the model itself. So if you want to do that, instead of having bed mesh validation here, you would simply have weight check here. And so I will mention that if you do set that, then it may mean that when your bed is cold, you get some red warnings down here that it thinks it's picking up some weight, and it's, unless the amount is ridiculous, it's safe to ignore those warnings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set the bed mesh validation to true, and I'm going to do a save config because my auto bed leveling completed. All right, I think I'm ready to do my first test print. And I know this has been detailed, but I've tried to work through everything that you might have questions about. And let me just mention that Alexander is truly a genius in a very self-sacrificing way. He is being very invested in getting this really awesome. There's been a lot of patches and fixes that people who don't do this approach don't get, because the clipper on the main board from the stock factory is an old and aging clipper, and you get a side load of the newer, better with this. And there are lots of macros, and the sky's the limit on what's available to you in the clipper universe when you have an up-to-date fluid, an up-to-date mainsail, an up-to-date clipper, and an up-to-date moonraker. And it's beyond the scope of this to go into how to use Moonraker together with Telegram to automatically get updates sent to your phone when a print starts, when a print completes, if a print runs into an error. And also there's a feature now for basically packaging up screenshots and sending them off to an off printer service like that, where you can do your processing for time lapses away from your printer's workload. And just everything about the way this mod implements the camera is better than how it was done before. And you have access to optimizing the image's quality, for instance, its brightness and so forth. And you can have it set up, and it defaults this way, so that it's using less bandwidth and less memory for the camera to operate and for those thumbnails to be sent off. And there's just a long list of really good things that you get with this mod that you don't get with the earlier approach. And I've used both side by side for quite a while now, and I do indeed like this approach. It may take a little bit longer to get it set up at the beginning. In fact, it typically does, but I think it's worth it for what you gain. And we are indeed now ready for me to run a test print. So let me switch over to Orca Slicer. All right, here we are in Orca Slicer. I'm on my AD5M 4mm nozzle with my new feather screen approach. I've got my G-code in. I'm going to change this from the 0.28 to a 0.20 millimeter layer height, and I want to enable supports. I want the supports to give me a little bit more than normal. I'm printing this hinge deliberately at a 45-degree angle because I want to avoid layer line adhesion weakness issues. I don't want these holes splitting open because the layer lines were running this way, and I don't want these hinge loops splitting because of layer lines running this way. So by doing it at 45 degrees, I get the best of both worlds for both orientations of holes, and that results in supports that look like this. And I've printed quite a few of these. They print perfectly in this orientation. So let's do upload and print. MD5 check failed, print canceled. All right, maybe I don't have that set up right. Let's check and see. I think that's the correct path. Let me just try it on the 0.28. All right, it's working on the 0.28, and maybe my printer just wasn't ready yet. I'll try again later on the 0.2, but for now, let's just sit back and watch this test print run and see what we get from it. Hey, future me again. I was in a hurry and didn't take time to explain or even check when my print failed due to the MD5 checksum issue. I'm not sure if it happened because my printer hadn't fully booted up yet and therefore didn't get the whole file. But the bottom line is that when a print stops due to the MD5 check failure, it usually means that the file was corrupted during upload, and there should be a console explanation about the MD5 mismatches. In fact, I may be able to go back to the video and check and see what the screen said at that point.